My name is Sam. I'm the Partnerships and Communications Manager here at Fairygodboss. And if you didn't already know, Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. Our platform supports women in their careers through free resources like company reviews, job listings, webinars with lots of different experts, virtual recruiting events, and a community where you can be honest about your triumphs and failures, either as yourself or anonymously. So welcome to our latest installment of our new Discovery series, where we're taking a look at non-traditional career paths for women and talking to experts in the field. Before we get things started today, we will be taking questions throughout the webinar, so feel free to leave them in the Q&A. And we'll do so. Manila I see. So the like real an IIoT monitoring system. She's brought cybersecurity to live projects. Rebekah is a security manager for Accenture, specializing in ICS security. She provides clients with services such as defining company-wide ICS security programs, conducting ICS security gap assessment or risk modeling workshops, and providing materials and tools to close ICS security gaps, complete ICS security remediation programs, and conduct ICS security run and maintain assurance. Say ICS 20 times fast. Oh my. So thank you both for being here today. I'm really excited to have both of you on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to get started, and I would love to hear more about yourself. So Rebekah, if you want to start off, tell me a little bit more about yourself, maybe how you got into cybersecurity. Would be great to hear.
Yeah, it was, so I'm Rebekah Mohr. As she mentioned, I am specialized in OT security or ICS security. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means later, just touching on it. But I'm from Canada. I am based out of Houston though, so I'm currently situated, I've been in Houston for 3 years. And cybersecurity was kind of a right place at the right time, or I don't say luck, I say it as Oprah says it, you know, she says it's a preparation meeting opportunity. And what happened was I had an undergraduate in computer science and math, and then I had a master's in statistics, which if you were wondering why I did that in the first place, I thought it would be cool to be a criminal analyst or a forensic analyst, something like that, solving crimes using statistics. But that didn't come to be. I did an internship with Shell during my master's, and they offered me a position at a refinery up in Canada, one of our largest refineries in North America. And I didn't really know what I was getting into at first, but they basically said to me, Rebekah, we don't have anybody that does this job, or we can't find anybody that's skilled or experienced. So if you join us, we will give you the best training in the industry, and just try, do your best. And it was a sink or swim scenario, and thankfully I was swimming pretty quickly. They gave me 4 certifications within my first 4 years with Shell. And then it's been 10 years since I started there, and I just fell in love with the practice of OT security, and I took it from there.
That's awesome. Minela, if you want to tell us a little bit more about you, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Minela Bajrovic, and the last name is pronounced bye, like goodbye, row your boat, bitch, just in case. Yeah, so I'm also in Houston. I'm currently at Halliburton. I was at PAS before, and that is really where I got into cybersecurity, was at PAS, which was a little bit of a similar situation to Rebekah too. I came to PAS to sort of learn about automation, and I just brought what I knew how to do, which was coding, to learn something that I didn't know, automation. And while I was there, the core product that PAS makes really fits into like the OT cyberspace. It fits really well. And so while I was there, they kind of shifted their focus to cybersecurity. And so I also, luck met preparation. Opportunity met preparation as well to get into the industry. I think it's a really good mix of my past experience, both on the IT side and the OT side. And so it's been a nice like soft landing spot for me. And then as far as my time at Halliburton, it's been more about having practical industrial experience, because unlike Rebekah, I haven't worked at a shell before where I was in the refineries, where I was at the end user. And so my time at Halliburton has really been that's the purpose that it serves for me, is for me to be able to see how are these products being used, and frankly, what do our customers actually care about?
Yeah, exactly. And touching on that, I mean, I'd love to hear about what you do kind of on a big picture.
So my job at Halliburton is within the advanced manufacturing group. And so we are trying to digitize manufacturing at Halliburton, which basically means that every single machine that Halliburton uses within its manufacturing division, which, by the way, for everybody else on the call, Halliburton produces almost everything internally. We buy very few external materials from vendors or suppliers. So concrete is poured at Halliburton into creating pipes all the way down to PCB boards. Because of that, there's a lot of heavy machining equipment, a lot of industrial equipment, and most of it is super old, or there's no way to communicate to it. And if there is a way to communicate it, it's definitely not on the network. So part of that has been, some of the big picture stuff has been creating an OT network where we could basically put a bunch of monitoring PLCs or other monitoring equipment on an OT network and not have to worry about that equipment being basically the playground for infiltrating the Halliburton network. So that's been a really big picture thing. And then some smaller projects that go into that, like projects that feed into that, are things like taking old equipment that there is no way to connect to, there's no way to talk to it. We have to add additional external sensors, connecting those sensors to the network to produce metrics, things like utilization. How much are we using this machine? What are we using it for? Who's using it when? Things like that. So it's combining IT resources that are already on the Halliburton network with machining information that we're collecting from external sensors.
Got it. And then Rebekah, same question to you. What does your job look like on a big picture basis?
Yeah, so after 6 years with Shell, I did switch over to Accenture, where I am now. So I'm a consultant with Accenture in their cybersecurity department. I want to talk I want to go really big picture about cybersecurity in general. I'll hone in on what I do. But really big picture, cybersecurity is all about protecting people's data, protecting people's IP, protecting an organization from cybercrime. And so if you zoom in on what OT security is, the difference between IT and OT, IT stands for information technology, and that's where the big focus is on the confidentiality of information and data and IP. The OT is operations technology. So now we're talking about refineries, chemical facilities, water treatment plants, and making sure that those are protected in a cyber fashion. So protecting the cybersecurity of that equipment. So when you think about all of our critical infrastructure down to this goes all the way from Disneyland rides have OT components that protect you in a safe way and make sure that they shut down when they're not operating safely. Traffic lights are part of our critical infrastructure. Like I mentioned, water treatment facilities, so the treatment of our water. And all of that infrastructure is managed by computers. And if those computers are not protected, then we are not protected. And so big picture, what I do is the biggest difference between IT and OT is that OT systems tend to have components that can go boom and explode. So we are protecting human lives, we're protecting the environment, we're protecting revenue of the company and those sorts of things by doing what we do. And I find that that's why the women that I know in OT security tend to really relate to that message and tend to stay committed to this because they really care about the water that our families and our children are drinking, and they really care about making sure that we protect human lives and that we protect the environment. And so that's what I found a lot of women tend to latch onto in this career.
That's awesome. And then I do want to get into kind of the differences between IT and OT in a second, but first I want everybody to hear about, so what is it you actually do on a day-to-day basis? What does that look like? I mean, you're saving lives clearly, but how are you doing that?
I'll start first, Manila. So day to day as a consultant, every day varies. When I was at a refinery, my days were a little bit more predictable, still kind of varying, but day to day as a consultant, I will go to typically oil and gas clients. That's my specialty. I go to oil and gas clients and I advise them on how to protect their infrastructure. I specialize in the governance aspects of that, the risk management aspects of that, the compliance aspects of that. And so I'm focused on risk. I really talk about protecting them from a risk perspective. So what are you really doing to address the risk? What technical controls are you implementing, and how much does that really implement your risk? When we had the big downturn in oil and gas, people were commonly coming to me to talk about what's really the biggest bang for my buck. If I only have, back in the heyday, they could spend millions of dollars on their cybersecurity program, and it was just, fun and games, and let's buy all this technology. But nowadays they're talking about what's the best way for me to address my risk, and what technology or what people do I need to invest in order to do that? So that's most of the conversations I have day in and day out is that conversation. At the site, it could be going around patching computers, going around installing firewalls and configuring them. Every day was somewhat different, but most of the time we were just making sure that we followed. There's always a standard that we need to follow of technical controls, and on any given day, we're just making sure that we're following that standard and everything is as secure as possible. Hand it over to you, Minela.
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit about day-to-day, what I'm working on here at Halliburton. My current project, I'll give you some details on my current project right now. It's literally to track how much we're using these test chambers. So they're environment chambers, which are basically just giant ovens that heat and cool PCB boards to test that they will actually maintain their integrity and be functional when they're, thousands of miles underground. So there is no way to connect these ovens. There's nothing that we can connect to read off of, to see, to get any kind of metrics at all. And so we are trying to get utilization data off of it. And I have an external PLC, which is an OT component, which is an example of a control device that controls things, including traffic lights. And it is connected to some external sensors, mainly thermocouples, which measure temperature. And then I am tracking the temperature changes to determine when the oven is on and off. So there's some very practical, simple examples like that that are about the business of Halliburton, and then there is the more security related and sort of big picture things like the OT network, to basically make sure that, hey, this PLC is not on Halliburton's network, and we don't need to worry about, because the PLC is a relatively dumb device that doesn't have a lot of security built into it. How can we protect the Halliburton network from anyone accessing this PLC?
Cool. So now I want to really get into kind of the different career paths you can have in cybersecurity. So Minela, I'll start with you. Mm-hmm. What would you say are some really important skills people need if they want to get into cybersecurity, either that they should inherently have or that they should try and educate themselves about?
Okay. I personally don't believe that there's any such thing as an inherent skill, for any job or any major even. Probably, maybe math is one of the most basic skills just to get through engineering school. But I don't even necessarily know that you need to be an engineer. I think a really obvious and easy one, that's probably the most direct one, is programming, having a coding background, because that's been how I've been able to shift and move through different industries. I've effectively changed industries twice now in a relatively short 10-year career. So coding, I think, is a really strong one. And I think having a coding background, it gives you a lot of opportunities, and it kind of forces you to think a different way. It's about logical problem solving, So that would be one. As far as more IT skills, I think networking skills. So that's something that you could do even while you're in college, right? Getting involved with an IT company where you're actually going out and putting in, even if it's putting in cabling, but understanding how networks actually work is really great. Analysis skills that go with network analysis, but maybe more general analysis skills, so things where you could maybe analyze malware, or analyze networks and things like that. Those are probably some ones I can think of off the top of my head. What about you, Rebekah?
Yeah, I would say that I never thought that my statistics background would come into play ever. And all of a sudden I was asked, they basically said, Rebekah, yeah, you know statistics, like go in a conference room, don't come out for 2 weeks, and come out with a risk management strategy for a show. And then that's become my brand. That truly has become what people come to me for. Whether I like it or not, that's what people come to me for in my job is risk management. It's become part of my brand. And so I think there are skills that you wouldn't expect that you can brand yourself with. And I also think, someone just recently said to me, if we had the right people to solve these problems, we would have solved them already. And so the problem is that we keep hiring the same people into this organization, and people have a preconceived notion about what they bring to the table. And I think we need to expand our horizons of what we think are skills that are needed, and really think about that. So for example, actually, somebody submitted a question. I'm going to jump to this really quick because it ties to what we're talking about. But somebody talked about how they have user experience education, so they're very strong in UX. I think that people like me are developing training for security. So I develop training for users at the organization. I am not I don't know how people learn. I don't know how people think. I don't know how people are going to receive training. I can educate you on security, but am I really the best person to do that? And so this user experience person, they would be great at knowing how people think and how people learn and what they need to see, and visually how people think about the problem. So there's all kinds of things we need to bring to the table, and there's things like you can do forensics, you can do auditing, you can do cloud, there's security law. We don't have enough people that understand the law and understand security and can actually defend someone in court when it comes to cyber law. Like, that's a huge gap in our market. And I would encourage anyone that has law to think about that, because I think that niche market can make you a lot of money pretty quickly. There's penetration testing, there's physical security. So there's also, how do I manipulate physical security to break into a place? That's part of the problem. There's incident response, there's threat analysis and threat intelligence, so understanding malware. We have people on our team who they know, different languages. So one woman knows both Russian and English, and she basically just has to look in the dark web to understand what our current threats are, and because she can read both sides of the conversation. So, I mean, there's all these different skills you can bring to the table and add value, and it's just about thinking about how you market that in order to get the job.
Yeah, I completely agree. Oh, go ahead, Minela.
I just want to add to the law comment that Rebekah made. Policy is a huge area that I think lawyers could actually add a lot of value to. And I know my master's degree has an entire track for policy. So there's a big landing spot there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Something I don't think most people would think about when they think about cybersecurity. Yeah. So thank you both for that. Rebekah, I know you were talking about the difference between IT and OT before. Now, touching on kind of that question about what skills do people need, or maybe skills they should work on if they're going to cybersecurity, are there some skills that lend themselves better to IT over OT or vice versa?
Ooh, interesting question. I haven't really thought about that. I would say the biggest thing is what Minela talked about, is about how she went back to being on the Halliburton side in order to add value to the OT security side. I think that in order to be really successful, you need to have the street cred. And what I mean by that is you need to have worked at somewhere that you understand what it feels like day in, day out to I was essentially working inside of a bomb, if you really think about it. On any given day, I could have exploded, and there were days that was very real and a real threat. And I think people need to understand when they're selling to OT security, or when they're trying to support OT security, they need to really understand what that feels like. They need to understand that something as simple as patching a computer I mean, to us, we have our work computer. So I'm talking to you on my work laptop, and it gets patched in the background, and sometimes it reboots, and we're all frustrated, and we're like, it rebooted on me. That's so annoying. But in an operating environment, you can't do that. So I cannot just patch an operator's workstation and it just goes down on him and he has no idea what's going on, or her, sorry. My operator happens to be a man, but they were female. And that's just not acceptable for their computer to just go down out of nowhere. And so it can take an hour to patch one computer, because I need to be in my office, I need to put on my blues, I need to walk out to the field, I need to talk to the operator, I need to explain to him what's going on, and then I need to do a very simple job that's really a 5-minute job, but the whole thing end to end takes an hour. Sometimes I need a permit to get into that area of the field, that sort of thing. And so I think the street cred is what will really help you understand what you're doing, and then you can take all the other skills that I talked about or that Minela talked about and apply those to OT security. That's my best advice.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, and we had a question coming from the audience. This goes to whoever wants to answer it, but do either of you use mob programming or peer programming in your work?
Yeah, so I was actually gonna answer this earlier, but I figured it'd be easier to just say it rather than type it. So this is actually, I'm really glad that you brought this up, because this has been something really interesting about my own work experience that I have not seen anywhere else, and I mostly attributed to the type of product that PAS had, but we very much worked individually. Like I used to kind of jokingly call it my cave job, because it was just one developer, one program at a time, and we didn't work together on our models, because basically what we were doing was modeling how a control system works, both in terms of hierarchy and its connections within one system as well as external systems. So you're effectively mapping out an entire plant and all of its control systems across vendors and across types of systems. So it was very much one model, one developer. As far as more, I see as products that are more targeted towards the IT crowd or that are developed by people originating in IT. I think they are more peer programming, but it mostly depends on if you have a product that has a base version, has a foundation, and then has modules, and those products tend to be developed more individually, or if you have a product that is sort of a flat lay. So if you think about it like a network structure program is probably going to be developed by a lot of programmers all at the same time together in a peer type of environment. Whereas a modeling software like what I worked on would be more one-on-one.
Great. Okay, now I kind of want to zoom out a little bit, and I'll start with Rebekah here. So overall, why is this a great career choice for women? Does it offer a flexible work environment, remote work options, a really great salary? Why would you recommend this going into cybersecurity to a friend?
Okay. So first of all, there's a huge job shortage in cybersecurity. If you've read the statistics, they say that there's 1 million job shortage. We don't have enough people to fill the gap. And some people say it's even more dire than that. The facts are we just need women just to start filling that gap. If we don't recruit more women, we have a big problem. So that's problem number one. But what's in it for you as a woman? Yes, salary, very good. Yep. Great salaries, really great job security. So I have no concerns that what I do is a skill that's going to go anywhere. Robots are not going to start doing what I'm doing. I know that I will have a full career in cybersecurity if I want to stay in cybersecurity. So I love the job security. I love that there's so many different aspects to security. So like I mentioned, all those different areas you could explore if you're in security. And as a consultant, that's even much easier because in a consulting organization, you can move around within the consulting organization and try out different projects and without changing your whole career. There are, in terms of flexible work arrangements, that depends. There are some, they pop up for sure. I've seen remote job opportunities. There's been times in my career I have had remote job opportunities. At one point I was working for Shell and I was remote for 3 years of that. However, there's a catch because they wanted someone in North America and they're based out of Amsterdam. And so I was flying to Amsterdam quarterly, and then I was flying around North America at least once a month, somewhere within North America. So lots of travel tends to come if you have a remote job. And some companies, it depends on the company, but some companies are getting a lot more open-minded about the flexible work arrangements. And you know, Accenture's really opened the door for that, but there's other organizations too that are really understanding that it doesn't make sense. I mean, we now have internet, we have computers, we can truly work from anywhere, and they're becoming more open-minded about that. It just depends on the company that you look at.
Great. Okay, and then Minela, did you have any other additional thoughts to add on to that one?
Yeah, so it's sort of similar to what Rebekah was saying, that mostly I think we're still in a relatively young phase of the industry. So this is an opportunity for us to level set so that we don't have to have the same conversation that, you know, high tech is having in Silicon Valley now, that we're having 10, 15 years later. Why are there no women? Why are there no women in leadership positions? If we're here at the beginning and we're sort of landing, we can build a strong foundation and be there in the base. And also it's fast paced. As far as flexible work environment, I will say that I think a lot of it also depends on what type of job you have. So my job where, you know, I have to be there to physically touch equipment, and that's sort of like the entire point of my being here, or Rebekah's job at Shell before. So if you're trying to gain that street cred within OT, it's sort of impossible to do that without having the hands-on experience. So I don't know that I think those kinds of jobs are tougher to be remote. If you're in a consulting organization like an Accenture, I think there are more opportunities. So there maybe is some more flexibility there. And yeah, I do totally agree about the salary. So there's just a lot of opportunities. Just jump in.
Awesome.
Dive in head first.
We had a question coming from the audience. Could you suggest ways to acquire hands-on experience with a degree in cybersecurity in policy and management?
Okay.
You want to take that, Minela?
Yeah, so I'm actually, okay, I don't want this to be a promo for Georgia Tech. I'm doing a master's at Georgia Tech right now. They have 3 different tracks. One is policy, one is energy systems, and one is information security, which is like the more sort of traditional IT type of security. I think that's a great opportunity if you want to have like a more formalized education, where there's like a degree plan and, you know, there's strict deadlines and all of that. Some things that I have found during the degree that I think are super useful is a open source project called OpenPLC, which would be an amazing way to learn about programming PLCs, which is sort of like the base, most ubiquitous control system out there, and that is going to give you a lot of street cred. If you know ladder logic, that sort of answers a lot of questions for people. I think it's free, open source. It's a little difficult to install, but that's kind of part of the challenge. And I would be more than happy to help people out, like give them some guidance and some resources on that. So if people want to connect with me, whether it's on the Fairygodboss group or personally with me, that's fine. I'd be happy to share those resources out too.
Awesome. And that kind of brings us to the final question. Now that we're hitting our time limit here, are there any online courses or resources that people should look to if they're trying to either learn more about cybersecurity or start learning and trying to get into the field?
Minela, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so there are 2 different organizations that I know of that offer totally free lecture style training modules, right? It's NIST and ICS CERT. Both of them are free. ICS CERT is run by the government. It's basically from the military arm, and it's a training module that they offer in real life as well, that a lot of security professionals have actually taken, and it's something that you can do on your own time. There aren't really deadlines or tests or anything, so it's sort of more formalized than, you know, an open PLC type of project. But not all the way to a degree level. I think those would be really great sort of intro courses for people.
Yeah, and then I want to add on to that if you are getting into the big bucks and you've done the intro stuff and you are getting into a job, I would really recommend negotiating into the contract that you get a training budget and a solid training budget. So things like there's SANS courses, so SANS, and so for example, there's Security 301, Security 401, those are intros to IT security. Then there's ICS 410, that's intro to OT security. And those can cost upwards of $5,000. So those you don't want to pay for privately, but negotiate that sort of training budget. Maybe say that you can take a SANS course once a year or once every other year. Get that negotiation in the contract. I would recommend that highly. And with those, you get certifications. So there's a package, and they're called GIAC certifications, GIAC. So not every SANS course, but every GIAC course has an affiliated SANS. Every GIAC certification has an affiliated SANS course that will train you and prep you for that certification. And the certifications are great for your resume. So definitely recommend that in. And then as far as just building, just getting into experience, not through training, formal training, there's organizations like, for example, CSAI, I'll plug them. They have chapters all around the world. That's spelled CS2AI. They have chapters around the world that you can go to and just learn. They're free, they're meetups, and you just go and learn. So there's lots of things like that, like meetups that you can go to. There's tons of women in security initiatives. There's even now a Girl Scout cybersecurity badge, so you can always get involved that way. There's Girls Who Code, that you can get involved with Girls Who Code initiatives. So there's things like that you can kind of start getting into that network, and that will get you trained, in the background as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. If anybody on the line is interested in learning more about cybersecurity, or you have any questions that were unanswered, Minela has started a Fairygodboss group called Women in Cybersecurity, which you're all invited to join. We'll include a link to the group, as well as a great article about cybersecurity and a follow-up email that will probably be sent out tomorrow. So stay on the lookout for that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you again, Minela and Rebekah. This was a really great conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your day.